Hey, everyone. Welcome to Office Hours. Happy October. Glad to have you all here. You're either seeing us through Teams or through YouTube. If you're in our YouTube channel, feel free to drop questions in the chat. And if you're in our Teams meeting, then you can also use the chat feature, but on Teams, we can actually take you off mute and we can have more of a discussion. So feel free to raise your hand and we can unmute you and be able to talk to you. So if this is your first time here and you're kind of wondering, okay, what's this whole office hours thing about? We do this once a month. It started a couple years ago and we just see it as a way to connect with people, we've been working with or different clients, and we're just here to answer questions. You might have questions about Office 365. You might have questions about modernizing your workplace. Any and all and in between, we're
Absolutely.
Here to answer.
And we like to have a good mix of
Yes,
those things.
yes. So if you've got technical questions, feel free to drop those in. If you've got more conceptual, hey, I'm having an issue with change management, how do you guys deal with this? Feel free to ask those. A little bit about me. I'm Emma, and I'm joined here with Mike. I'm a project manager here at Bulb. Fancy name for it is delivery lead. And I'd love to hear questions about project management today, what tools we use. Microsoft is coming out with some new project management tools, so we can talk about those. And what are you an expert in, Mike?
I do anything
Sure.
Office 365. I've recently been chosen as the leader of the hard work team, so super excited about that.
I'd like to become an honorary member.
Yeah, there you go. One thing I'm going to mention before we get rolling is happy birthday, Emma.
Oh, thank you. Yes, it is my birthday today. So thank you all who are joining on my birthday. This is a fun part of my day that I get to do this.
Oh, wow.
Oh, man. They've got the music in the background. You guys are too good behind the desk.
Give everyone a shout out. Happy birthday, Emma.
Thanks, Mitch. We've got Benjamin and Mitch behind the desk supporting us today. So, yeah, it's a good day. Good day for a birthday. All right. Well, any questions so far? I don't think we've gotten any dropped in yet, but feel free to throw some in.
There's some happy birthday love.
Oh, man. Thanks, Tanya. You're the best. Thank you, everyone. Feeling the love.
And so also another kind of a new thing that we're starting to showcase or roll out a little bit that while we're waiting for questions to roll in.
Yeah.
We have a new modern workplace community called The Workplace.
Hey,
that's
and
good, it's intended as a place, it's a subscription-based community, and you can join and ask questions there and get direct help. And it's kind of intended to be a place where we can all of us like-minded people can join and collaborate and help solve each other's challenges and kind of share what we've been doing. And it's also a place for us to provide additional content for you guys to consume and help make you successful in terms of things like webinars and some of the other content that we're starting to roll out as well. So I would encourage you to check that out. Mitch, I don't know if we want to share details right now. We're piloting it for the end of the year. So for the last 3 months of 2023. And I think our annual subscription, correct me if I'm wrong, $999. But if you get in on the pilot, it's half price for life, I believe.
Yeah,
Good deal.
you got it.
Yeah.
So if you're interested in that, feel free to, connect with us. We're not providing a public like join link or anything right now, but feel free to reach out and we'll get you in the door.
Yeah, we're excited about it. And it's just another one of those ways that we feel like we'll be set up to have deeper discussions with people versus just quick, like YouTube comments or that sort of thing. So it's going to allow for just more discourse and discussion, and then also learning from others so that there's just more shared knowledge.
Yeah, I think that's one of the
happening.
most exciting things. We actually, in a lot of the work that we do, we are connected with organizations that have high-level agreements with Microsoft, and so they have a lot of licensing they're paying for. And Microsoft, even in those high-level agreements, they will provide expert resources who can help. But the reality is, not everybody who's doing all of the no-code, low-code, like the business users who are building apps and using SharePoint and using Teams, they don't all get access to that expert resource. And so we see that a lot. And so that's part of the idea behind the community, is that we can provide that expertise in another way outside of that one avenue that's honestly fairly limited. Microsoft has created this behemoth of a system.
Right.
And everybody in the world practically is using it, and there's no possible way that they can provide expert advice and help to everyone who's using that platform now. And so we think there's a real need there.
Yeah, we're excited about it. So like Mitch said, reach out to us if you're interested in joining, and we'll chat with you. We do have a new question here. Let's read this one out. So the question, would you recommend calling a flow from Power Apps versus when an item is created or updated? It's a complex flow that runs based on an approval process with multiple stages. Approvals are manual and not with the Power Automate approval. Thanks. And happy birthday. Thanks.
Yeah. That's a great question. So I think the follow-up question that I would have would be something like, it sounds like you're doing something out of SharePoint, so when an item is created or updated, or maybe you're doing something out of Dataverse. I would be interested in which one of those, if that's the case. In the case that it's Dataverse, I like the onUpdate and onCreate trigger a lot. They work pretty effectively. You can apply filters to them. You can apply a list of columns to be paying attention to, so that you're not running that flow when a certain column isn't updated, and it's quite effective and reliable. So I really like that as an option. If you're using SharePoint, it's a little bit trickier because I have been witness to scenarios where somebody creates an item in a list and the flow doesn't always pick it up. And it's usually pretty rare, but it does happen. It's likely because the trigger mechanism isn't as tightly connected or coupled with something like Dataverse. And so there can be challenges there. The other thing to consider in regards to like, how do I trigger that process? Do I just do it when an item is created or modified versus something else? The something else is for a selected item, so you can force your users to explicitly start the process, which can be an effective thing. And you can do that through providing, basically you connect the flow to the list, and then the option to start that flow will show up in the Automate menu for a selected list item. In addition to that, there are mechanisms that you can use to actually implement basically a button that you can add to your SharePoint list item so that you can kick off the flow that way. And the nice thing about that is when the user kicks that off, it absolutely starts the flow. And so if you're concerned about the onUpdated or onCreated not always catching the scenario, that can be a good way to go.
All right. And Eric, I did unmute you as well, or enable your microphone if you did want to share any more context there.
Yeah, can I follow up on that?
Sure.
Absolutely.
So you're telling me, and maybe I missed this, but you're telling me there's a way to trigger the flow with a button in Power Apps even when an item is created or modified.
So if you're using a Power App, so you said SharePoint was where the data is, correct, which means you're using a Canvas app basically to connect to the SharePoint
correct
list. Okay.
Yes.
And so in that scenario, because your users are using a Canvas app, a button that calls run flow would be fantastic. Now, the trick with the created or updated is you're going to rely on Power Automate, the polling trigger, because that's what it really does, is it goes around and polls for anything that is new or changed in the SharePoint list, and then it attempts to fire based on that.
Right.
So then you're going to rely on that polling trigger to pick that change up or pick that creation up. And I have seen scenarios where it misses 1 in 100 for various reasons. And I don't know what they all are because I'm not privy to everything that's going on behind the scenes, but I know that it's happened. I actually was troubleshooting an issue just about an hour ago that was that exact problem where somebody had created a new request in a SharePoint list and the approval never came to them because the flow never actually ran. And so that does happen on occasion. The button can be a nice way to do it because you can not only can you call run flow, you can get a response from the flow. So it can be, the flow can actually tell you, I got the request and I'm going to do something with it. Or you could actually have the flow actually do a little bit of processing and return some sort of meaningful result to the user so they could have confidence that the flow was actually started or that the process was started. So that can be a good way to do it as well. If you have a Canvas app in place that you can control that scenario, that's the ideal way to do it, and it'll be ultimately a better user experience.
All right.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks, Eric, for your question. Let's follow right along to Christina's. She asks, how do you extract the month name for the previous month and also filter by it? I tried extracting and it extracts the month number fine, however, it gave me the wrong month name. If I try, however, in a for all, it shows both the accurate month number and name.
Okay, so Christina, I think we need a little bit more details about your scenario. Maybe you can come off mute and kind of share a little bit more specific about what you're trying to do. It sounds like you're in a Canvas app probably, and you're in maybe a gallery and you're trying to figure out what the previous month is for the current row based on what the month is in the current row or something, but I'm kind of guessing.
Here she comes.
Hi, yes. Right. So it's a Canvas app. Have some stuff displayed in a gallery. However, I want to patch in another table for the month name. And again, to that, it states in that the previous month was September as a number 9. However, the month name as December.
So I'm trying. Can you? So I got the part about you're trying to patch something in another table, and so you have a row and it has a month number, and you're trying to calculate the name for the previous month. Is that?
No, it have a date in the table, right? So for the table now, because I'm pulling from one table, I'm trying to store it in the next table. So the table stores the date. So I'm trying to extract the month number from that.
From the date.
Or the month, right. For
Okay.
the previous month, which will be September in this case, and then store it as the month name in another table with the information.
Okay, so every row in your table has a date, and you essentially are trying to get the previous month name from whatever that date is. Is that correct? All right, so I think I'm trying to think of the best way to go after troubleshooting this issue. So I think, and obviously you're attempting something right now. Do you have a snippet or a sample function or a little bit of low code that you could share with us?
Yeah, sure. I'll send a screenshot one time.
That would be great.
Yeah, this one sounds like could be a very frustrating problem if you think you're set.
I've been trying to figure it out.
Yeah, I can see how that would be. And if it keeps spitting out the wrong month name.
I'm going to share the difference in the two as well, how it runs.
All right.
All right. For those of you joining us on YouTube, we'll probably share our screen here once Mike starts solutioning, but we're going to take a look at this low code quick.
So you're subtracting a month from today's date,
Mm.
and then you're getting the month from that.
Right. So I sent here that it shows that it is September in this piece of code without asking for the month name. However, with this one, shows December. And if we use it in for all,
So in this particular example, you're saying you expect the name September to come and show, but it's actually showing
Yeah.
December.
December, yeah.
Okay, I'm going to create a new little Canvas app here and play around a little
Okay.
bit. Is there another question we can move on to while I play?
Potentially.
Maybe,
Let me look
maybe.
back through here. Okay, Tanya's is patch from an app. How do you control the user that shows in created by? Should a service account show up, or did I miss updating something somewhere to get my name off of it? It is in a solution. We can always jump to that one after, but
Yep. I have an idea in my head on that one already, but we'll save that for a little bit.
okay. Eric's starting to solution here in the chat. Love this. Remove the word month at the front of the formula. He thinks that may fix it.
Maybe. I'm going to go play around with something here.
Okay. All right. Oh yeah, Eric's putting a couple more options in here. I love this. We're all solutioning together.
So
It
much
i-
of this stuff is.
it
there's
is
so
really
much, it's
great, though,
hard to
when
know
we
it off of
can-
the top of your head.
When we can
It's
get to the bottom
exactly
of
what
it.
the community is for.
Exactly. Yes.
There you go.
That did it.
Yeah, there you go.
So, Christina, is your issue that you can't get the month name?
It was showing the wrong month name, but when I removed the month, as Eric just said, it worked. It shows September now.
Mike's getting one set up here.
I'm just seeing how this stuff
Yeah, to see if we can
behaves.
play around with it. Okay, we're getting response here. This works. She tried the text instead of month. All right.
Okay.
Well, you've been beat at your own game.
I have been.
Thanks, Eric. It was good. Good helping out.
Join the community.
Yeah. Awesome. Glad we could get to the bottom of that for you. I think we can go to Tanya's question next, if
Cool.
that answers all of it. So I'll read out Tanya's one more time. She says, patch from an app. How do you control the user that shows in created by? Should a service account show up, or did I miss updating something somewhere to get my name off of it? It is in a solution.
So if you're patching from a Power App, it's going to be.
Oh, geez. Okay. A little national alert test here in the studio, but
Hey,
it's just a trial.
live action.
Yeah.
Forgot to turn my phone off too. Okay, so if you're patching from an app and you want to control the users that shows in the created by, so Tanya, I assume we're talking SharePoint here again or something different?
Yes, I think she responded. It's in SharePoint. Created
Okay.
in a SharePoint list, yeah.
Okay. There it was again. All right, so the only way this is something I think Matt Dressel touched on a few office hours ago, but I think there's a secret HTTP method you can use, like in a flow, to send an HTTP request to SharePoint. That's like an admin way or a back-end way to specify the details of a record, and you can control the created by in that scenario. If you're using an app, like a Power App, and the user is saving the record and you're literally saving or patching directly from the app, it's going to be whoever the user is logged in as, right? So if it's me, it's going to be me. You don't really have a good way to control it. If you're calling a flow in your solution from your Power App, the flow could run as the service account And then as long as the connection on the, whatever the SharePoint action is that you're, updating SharePoint with, if it's an HTTP request and you're patching, as long as that connection is set to that service account, it should show the service account as the creator or the modifier.
I did take you off, or I enabled your mic, Tanya, too, if you want to give any more context over your mic.
I'm trying to eat lunch, so it probably doesn't sound well.
All good.
It's okay.
We know how that goes.
Yeah, when you can fit it in. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm trying to disconnect myself and my user and everything, and I thought I had it all right, but I keep finding my name on stuff, and so I'm just, what am I missing? And I didn't know if the app connections and the solutions, and is there something else in there maybe I'm missing?
So
I'm just trying to bug.
Yeah. That's fantastic. So if is the save operation happening from the app or is it happening from a flow?
The initial creation is app, but it's a patch. So it calls a flow and then it creates a patch and then it does another flow and then it goes to different lists and there's a bunch of flows that the app never sees and it's pretty complex. So I'm having a hard time figuring out where I missed a connection.
Gotcha.
Because they all seem to be showing up as me, except for now that I just looked, it looks like I must have got the app one fixed. Of course, that's the one I ask about. Because that one seems to be showing created by the user.
Okay.
But everything else is showing me, and I swear I have service account on everything.
Now I understand where you're at. So yes, and I've been there before because I've created solutions where I've been the user doing all of the stuff because that's the only account that I had to do it with, and it frankly is not ideal. Yeah. Okay. So in your solution, you're going to have connections and or connection references, and so for all of those flows that are using SharePoint connections, if it's in a solution, I believe that Power Automate, while you're editing one of those flows, will give you a little prompt in the upper right-hand corner that says, hey, you're in a solution, switch this over to connection references. You don't have to do it, but it's like trying to guide you into that result. And so if and when you do that, that can be a good way to go through each and every one of your flows and switch everything to connection references. And then you make sure that every SharePoint action is using the same connection reference. And that connection reference should be owned by, logged in as the service account. So that's the ideal way to do it. But like if you have lots and lots of actions and things like that, you could go individually seek and destroy and try to like look at the connections on each and every one of them and flip it to the service account or make sure that that's the case. But the connection, switching to connection references is a bit of an easier way to go about it because you can come back after the fact and look at the properties of the flow and you'll actually see what connections it's using. So I guess that's another good way to think about this too. Let me see if I have any example flow in here. So if I just go look at the details of this one, it's got these connections here.
Should we share your screen?
Yeah, we can share my screen. In this list of connections, and when you look at these, you're going to want to see basically a single SharePoint connection. So if you've gone in and you started to switch over some of those actions to be the service account and some of them to be you or are still you, you're going to actually have multiple SharePoint connections identified here in the properties of the flow. So that's also an indicator. And once a connection is no longer in use, so then it will fall into a separate bucket, like it's still associated to the flow, but it will be not in use. And so then you can remove it from the flow. So that's one thing to check is on each flow, go look and see what connections are being used. But then if you edit each flow and it is in a solution, you should get a prompt that says, hey, you're using regular old connections, use a connection reference or switch to a connection reference, and then it'll force you to go through every action that's associated with those connections that are being changed and choose the connection reference. So if you don't have a connection reference, you'll have to create one from the service account. But then once you have that in place, you'll be able to associate it.
And so I need to be sure that I'm logged in as the service account when I do all this.
When you
right?
when you create the connection reference, you'll want to be logged in as the service account, and then as long as the service account is an owner on those flows, you would
They
be
are.
able to log back in as yourself and change the connection reference to the service account's connection reference. And then the other thing I'll tack on there on the end to consider or think about is it depends on what your flows are actually doing and how they're triggering and things like that. But you'll also want to pay attention to the run-only users properties of the flow. And so in there's an option for allowing or identifying what connection is used. And by default, they're all set to provided by the run-only user. And so that would, by its very nature, like if a person was to actually cause the trigger of the flow, then they would be the one whose connection would be used. But you can switch this to be a specific connection. So I can switch that to be my connection, for example, or in the case of a service account, you would switch it to explicitly be the service account's connection. And so then no matter how the flow got triggered, it would apply those connections across the board if you have that scenario.
I'll keep digging. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Awesome. All right, Christina's weighing in here. She says, is there also a way to bypass a delegation issue when comparing the date in a Dataverse column to the month before? Tried storing in a collection and filtering, but still have the same issue.
Comparing the date in a Dataverse column to the month before. So what comparison function are you using?
I could possibly snip the code here as well if you want.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
I will send the
Oh, you'll send
code
it?
Okay.
Yeah.
in, yeah.
Yeah, cool. So there's a whole thing somewhere about like delegation. Let me see. Delegable functions. Yay.
If you're joining on YouTube, we haven't forgotten about you. Feel free to post questions in the YouTube chat as well.
All right, so your function, your comparison is the month of a date equals the month of the other date. Got it.
The delegation issue coming up where I underline it, not snipping with the marker. So I just underline it.
Yep. And the date column is coming from where exactly?
From a database table,
Okay.
also stored or patched.
Gotcha. So I don't know if the month function is delegable or not. Who knows? Anybody in the community know off the top of their head?
Eric's responding here. Try using variables for the month and the other.
So if it's from Dataverse.
While you're looking at that, I want to give a plug for non-technical questions as well. We love these ones. We love solutioning and figuring these things out, but also don't feel intimidated if you're joining and you think, I have a question that doesn't have to do with code or with a Power App or anything. You could ask us about how Teams is going, structuring that at your organization, or trying to roll out project for the web with Microsoft to your team, or really any of these topics are totally open for discussion. Doesn't have to involve code, but you love the code questions too.
You're not bored, are you?
No. I just want to make sure everyone feels like they can ask their question.
So from a Dataverse standpoint, it does not look like month is called out as something that's delegable. I'm trying to think if there's another way to.
Yeah, if you can't do it that way.
How many rows are you dealing with, Christina? Like, is it?
Currently, currently it's just 1, 2, 3, just 5 rows.
So, how many rows will you be dealing with?
Yeah, over 100, a good few.
So
Because basically what it is a travel app
yep.
to calculate your travel distance and then the reimbursement per employee.
Okay. And will this contain data for all time, or is it only?
The most it'll keep in that one table is for 2 months, because every month after it's claimed for, it'll be archived.
Okay. Do you? That is good. Do you think that it will ever go over 2,000 rows? I think there's a. So one of the things you could do is you could be like, hey, get me all the rows, bring them all into the app, into my collection, and then delegation doesn't matter, because then you do your filtering on a collection within the app, as opposed to pushing it to Dataverse or to SharePoint or whatever the data source is.
Nah, it shouldn't cross that amount. The most it might be for this specific solution might be 100.
Okay, so then in that scenario, where is it? Been a while since I've used it. So in you can share my screen if you're not already. But in the settings of your Canvas app, I assume that's what you're using. I would go in and change this data row limit to be like 2,000 or something like that. I think 2,000 is the limit. 500 might be enough for you, but if you change that to 2,000, then it will bring up to that many rows from whatever the data source is into the app. You could put that in your collection and then filter on the full data set. That would be a good option to get around that particular delegation issue. Because it doesn't sound like it's going to be that much data. If you told me, well, we're going to have 10,000 rows or something like that, I might then follow up with a question that would be something like, why are we using a Canvas app? Can we flip to model-driven apps or something?
No problem. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Tanya throwing us a non-technical question here. She writes in, Teams meeting was canceled by accident by organizer. How to restore that meeting link / use the same chat? You're not going to like our answer, Tanya. The short answer is you can't, which is definitely a flaw, I would say, in Microsoft. But unfortunately, it's not feasible to recover a canceled meeting. You can even try to recover it from your deleted items folder, but it's still going to show as a canceled event on the calendar. I believe we actually did this ourselves once and accidentally canceled a webinar and lost all of our registrants. So that was kind of worst case scenario. But yeah, unfortunately, that's kind of just a hole.
I was going to ask you, it sounded like you're very familiar with the problem.
Well, that wasn't, it wasn't really, I'm not going to blame anyone. It wasn't fully my fault, but that did happen. Mitch is raising his hand. Yeah, I mean, I wish that there was a way that you could use that same link and everything, but I do think it does ask you, are you sure you want to? No, it doesn't ask you, are you sure you want to cancel?
Straight up goes.
I think it just goes, yeah. So that is one of those things that you got to just watch out for and make sure when you hit that cancel button, you really mean it.
I wonder how often that happens. That'd be an interesting poll.
Let's see. She said the person that asked didn't like my answer either, but I had to hope I was wrong. I mean, I kind of hope I'm wrong too, but everyone here is nodding that this is the way. So.
Yeah. And it sounds like her goal. The next question was, is there any way to link to a chat in the new meeting? And so the goal is continuity, right? We're all, it needs to be the same meeting.
Yeah. I mean, I would say when we have our channel meetings set up, you still see the chat, even if you've canceled one and you start having, if you have a continuous.
Yeah.
recurring meeting, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah, if the meeting is
Mhm.
in a channel.
Mhm.
Yep, so that can be a good way to
A fail-safe if
manage
you're trying
around
to.
it. Yep.
Mhm.
The only other thing that I can think of, and I don't know off the top of my head because I've never done it, but I have a feeling if you asked your IT admin, they could go retrieve all of the chat messages and import them in some way, shape, or form. Like, so for example, you could probably even do it with Power Automate and move those messages over, but I don't know if that'd be worth it. But
And if they would
Maybe.
have the same timestamps and all
right,
that
yeah,
good
all of that.
stuff.
Yep,
Yeah,
yep.
yeah.
But
Right.
yeah, that becomes a data migration question more than a business process question for sure.
Right. Yeah, she's saying, oh, really, do tell. Well, I guess you've never technically done it before, so.
No, I have not
Yeah.
done that before, but I've played around enough with some of the actions to know that there's probably a way. So
Mm. Yeah, that's probably one of my greatest fears with multiple Microsoft tools is that when you delete things or you cancel things, more often than not, it's deleted and canceled. It's somewhat difficult to undo things. You end up having to recreate.
or when you create something and you didn't like the name or the URL in
Mhm,
SharePoint. For,
exactly,
like,
right, yeah.
yeah.
It's just, that's what it
You
is.
create a lot of work, which is, yeah, we like to think ahead a little bit. That's part of our built-in method, I guess.
Right. Let's see what else is Tanya saying here. Someone mentioned something about shared channels and moving info in our tenant. So maybe you could do that.
Yeah, that's similar to some of the same stuff that I saw. So people are starting to discover and figure out how to use shared channels. And for those who don't know, shared channels are basically a way for you to surface a channel either in your organization or in someone else's organization in the other organization in a way that integrates both organizations together, and you can have a Teams chat or whatever you want to have within that channel as if they were on your team. And they're really quite handy. They do require a level of IT administration to be able to make happen. You have to establish a trust between the two organizations and then potentially also determine who is allowed to participate in that two-way.
In those teams,
in those
yeah,
shared channels or in those
yeah.
teams. But they can be quite effective for doing that because in the scenario where you're, maybe you're working with a vendor or something like that and you own the data and you don't want your data to be in their organization. And so when you want to have a chat with them or a meeting with them, you set up that shared channel and you let them in. And so then any conversation or files or anything that get created within the context of that channel ultimately are created physically inside of your organization, so inside of your bricks and mortar, so to speak. And so ultimately you can mitigate risk and reduce liability, particularly if there's sensitive data involved.
Yeah, no, we're a big fan of shared channels if you can set them up that way. It's definitely a best practice of ours. Any other non-technical questions around really anything? We're loving the new tool Loop that
yeah.
Microsoft is putting together.
Loop is fantastic.
We can't share too much about it under NDA, but we love it. And there is a general public, I think, preview out there and more to come within the next couple months. Loop also has a loophole that I hate, that if you delete a page on Loop, it is forever gone. There's no recycle bin, no trash right now, but
Yep.
they're working through.
Yeah, my biggest, the biggest thing I love about Loop is even as it is still in preview, it does a darn good job of replacing OneNote.
Yes.
Like,
yeah.
holy smokes. It's so
Yeah.
much more effective, and it's much more tools. You're much more fluent in that tool than in OneNote.
Right.
So
And the formatting of everything, it's just so seamless.
yeah, you don't even have to
right.
think about that, right? Whereas
Right.
OneNote, you're like, oh, do I want a bulleted list? Do I want a numbered list? And
Yeah. And then the collaboration side of it too, just the fact that everyone can be in these tools at once and
Yeah.
working together and
Yep.
real-time updates.
Yep, Loop is a fantastic tool so far.
Yeah. Big fans. Yeah. What other topics do we have, Mike? What would you like to discuss? What's your hot take?
Well, I was gonna ask you if you had fun birthday plans.
Oh, Actually, I do. They're kind of Bulb Digital related. We'll share this every end of every summer. I don't know how many years you guys have been doing this. You buy a cow that we separate up amongst the employees, a steer, and I have some really nice steaks from Beef Day, and I'm going to be making a ribeye tonight.
Yum.
So
That's
it's going to be a highlight of my birthday for sure. If anyone has great ribeye tips
yeah. There you go.
for grilling out, love it.
We have some foodies on the team.
Yeah. I love it. Tanya's going, I can supply steers. That's great. What did she say here too? Anyone at the conference this week with scoops or updates? Oh yeah, loop for GCC. I know. We don't know yet.
I don't think it's there yet. That would be nice for those of us who have GCC clients, customers, for sure.
Yeah. So nothing too exciting on the birthday front, but thanks for asking.
I love that Tanya is familiar with ranch life.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
If we could move our whole company somewhere, I think it would be out west. I think everyone that works here would enjoy that.
Not Hawaii?
Well.
I mean, technically that is west.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're always jealous, Tanya, of wherever you're calling in from. You're always out somewhere out west traveling. Looks nice.
Oh, we should tell Matt Dressel to stop by on his way back. He's traveling and he's out west. He's coming back from California, which is why he's unable to join us today.
I know. Matt, we're jealous of all your photos. He just did the Grand Canyon tour and saw a lot of the national parks.
Good stuff.
I know. Well, we might put some music on here. If you have questions, we'll hang around for the next 20 minutes and we'll come back on if anyone's got something. But otherwise, we'll not make everyone listen to Mike and I just chat.
Yeah. We'll take it offline.
Yeah. All right. Put questions in the chat if you think of them. We'll be here.
Where's our YouTube folks?
I know. Yeah, let's come off. All right. Eric, you ask, I think I can use the question download equals 1 at the end of a link to a document in SharePoint Online to force it to download. Is there any way to force a download when the user clicks on the document name in the list?
That's
Good question.
Interesting question.
Yeah.
So probably not. You can, I don't know off the top of my head, but there's some additional fields that you get built in document libraries that are like links to the document. Maybe you could use one of those. Worst case scenario, the fallback might be to create a calculated column that would be a hyperlink, where you can basically get the base URL for the document, which you could get from one of the other fields, I think. And then add your, concatenate it, suffix the end of it with your question mark, download equals 1. And then the user that would replace the name field, essentially. Or you could put it alongside the name field and train your users to, click. You could call it the download URL or something like that. That would be another way to do that.
Nice. Well, we have everyone. We're going to ask a quick poll.
Hang on. I'm thinking. Sorry. There's also a setting, I believe, on the document library that is how it defines how the document is opened, the default behavior for opening a document, and it can be either in the web or in the desktop app. So I don't know exactly what document types you're dealing with, but if you're dealing with Excel or a Word document, for example, you can set that default behavior so that when the user clicks it, it will either open in the web, which is the default, or it will open in the desktop app. And if you force it to open in the desktop app, that's essentially like downloading it, right? It's actually better than downloading it because in the case that you don't want hundreds of copies of that thing floating around on people's workstations, they're actually opening it in the desktop app, and then if they need to make any changes, they would do that there. But that might be the easiest way, if you can do it at the library level, is to look for that setting and set that default behavior to open in the native or the desktop app.
Let's let Eric respond to that. Team typing. Oh yeah, likes that option. Nice. So this one comes from a little brainstorming session we had, but we're trying to figure out, as far as our audience, what words or ideas do you guys associate with us, me and Mike, or our team, or our work? So the space we work in or the work we do. If you had to choose just a few words or a basic idea or concept, please put those in the chat. We're kind of surveying and trying to get a feel for what people associate, what words they associate with us. So let us know what you think.
All right, so while you guys are doing that, Tanya dropped another question related to the last question, which was, where is that setting in the document library? So I've got my advanced settings. So if you go into your document library settings and you go look for advanced settings, there is an option here for opening documents in the browser. And the server default is open in the browser, but then you can say open it in the client application, and that will basically force it to try to go there first, as opposed to opening in the browser. So.
Okay. And it looks like we had a question from YouTube. They write, hi, any idea how I can proceed to make Microsoft Word files go directly into a SharePoint file? Proceed to make Microsoft Word files going directly into. Do you
So to me,
understand what they're asking?
yeah, I mean, more or less. So if you're using latest version of Office, one of the things that it's going to do when you try to save a file is it's going to be like, hey, let's look online first. One of the first places it's going to point you at is going to be OneDrive. Then you'll also have some options for any SharePoint sites that you have access to, or you could go find a SharePoint site that maybe it's not in your recent list or your favorites from your organization. And so that would be kind of a training issue, but the application, assuming you're using the desktop application, is also kind of guiding you in that direction if you're using the latest version of it. And then the other way to look at something like this is, well, do we need to use the desktop applications at all? Can we just use the browser app? And frankly, 90% of the features that you would have in Excel or Word are available in the browser interface, and it's good enough. And so instead of having desktop applications floating around, you could have people just using MS Word in the browser, and it would automatically
then it's
save.
Automatically in the SharePoint.
It's going to be in SharePoint, or it's going to be in OneDrive, depending on where the user starts. So a lot of this answer is tied up in, well, what is your organization doing in terms of collaboration and management of shared documents and files. And so if you're just a one-man show and you're trying to figure out how to I don't want to save this on my desktop, well, you should have an Office 365 subscription and create a SharePoint site or a team and start editing and creating documents there first.
And there is obviously just the deeper layer that you're touching on, but there does need to be some structure or guidance or training around what should be shared in OneDrive versus what should be shared in SharePoint. And then if it needs to be in SharePoint in a collaborative folder, where it should be saved. And there is obviously has to have some of that. But it looks like this is to do with a student organization. And you're saying, it's kind of difficult because the students are using it on the desktop.
Yeah,
right?
so then the question I have there is what, like that's maybe a much bigger question, and it's related to how are the students' accounts or profiles provisioned? Do they actually have, Office 365 licenses so that they could save something in SharePoint? Do they have a OneDrive?
Yep. How's their
that type of
computer
thing.
set up
Right, yeah.
too?
Do they own their machine or are
yeah.
they logged into the network?
Right.
Is it a university laptop, owned laptop, right? There's lots of questions there.
Yep.
But if you can get them all onto that same page using university managed devices and they have university managed profiles, then even if they're using the desktop applications, the natural method is going to be to save it to the cloud. That's what the applications and what Microsoft is pushing as a first step or a first priority.
Yeah.
That's a great question, though.
Yeah, that is a good one. Yeah. Oh, thanks, Tanya, for dropping some words you associate with us. That's helpful. Feel free, anyone else, to put your thoughts down. We appreciate it. If there aren't any more questions, we're probably going to wrap this up a little early, but I'll say we will be back. I think it's November. I got to look at the date here. November 1st is the first Wednesday of November. So we'll have office hours then, and you can always submit questions to us before. And if you register through our website, then you can join the Teams meeting and be able to come off mute and actually have discussions with us, which we always enjoy. We like to get the context of the issue and the problem so that we can get to the bottom and create a solution. As always, thank you for joining. It's been fun to chat. I'm going to check my list here to see if I've got anything else, any other big announcements. Hey, one thing we didn't talk about, Mike, is that we've been working on something all summer. It's our guidebook on internal communication. And I know, how could we forget?
It's super exciting.
It's been a labor of love. So we'll post a link about the guidebook where you can pre-order it, but that's actually going to get published and come out in November, which we're thrilled about, just a couple weeks from now. And it should have everything you need to know about setting up internal communication in a effective way, your organization. Anything else I'm forgetting on that?
I'm super excited about it.
Yeah.
Like, it's a substantial
piece of
content. So I think it's really great. And I'm excited because we're able to articulate so many of the principles and thoughts that we have around this stuff. And I think it'll be very helpful to a lot of people. And if it's not helpful to a lot of people, it's helpful for our team.
Yeah.
It's kind of, frankly, it's kind of a Bible of sorts, or 2 of the 10 Commandments.
To really have to articulate our thoughts about things as well. And as everyone listening knows, 2 people can be saying the same thing, but in a different way. And so it's really caused us to have some great brainstorming sessions and make sure we're all on the same page about how we approach problems. And there aren't always just one way to do things. So
Absolutely, yeah.
Looks like we may have had one other question come in while we were chatting. When sharing media files, is there an app in 365 versus putting a link in a file? So media sharing is 365. I'm not sure I fully understand Mary's question.
Yeah, Mary, if you could expand on that a little bit, what you're trying to do, maybe who you're trying to share with, what types of files you're trying to share. That might be a way to start. And maybe a little bit about what you mean by putting a link in a file.
Yep. And when I think media files, I guess I immediately think like a stream recording or something like that, or a video, but that could mean a lot of things.
Yeah, so just in general, there's lots of ways that media can be stored inside of Microsoft 365. And then if you're inside of the organization, it's very easy to share all of that content with anybody else inside of the organization.
And you could have a folder that's got documents, it's got workbooks that has stream videos, all the different types of media.
There's all kind. That's the thing. Is like, what is the type of media? Maybe it's image assets. There can be any number of things. So she's sharing video files with other users.
Most are from the internet, but some are from OneDrive.
Okay.
This is a good question. I might ask you this too, Mike.
Sure.
I'm always kind of curious about what is the best practice about. I think what she's trying to get at is if it's not your video file, then you can only share the link. Otherwise, you have to download the video and then actually store it somewhere.
Yep. Yeah, so probably an idea. So now that makes sense as to why she said a link in a file.
Right.
So inside of SharePoint, you can actually create, instead of a document or a list item, you can actually create a link to an external resource as a thing, and it can be tagged with all kinds of metadata. And so you can have that. You can have links to external things mixed in with your own media files and other documents, all in the same library. And SharePoint would be the tool that would give you the ability to do that. And so my recommendation would be that you decide what the purpose is of that content that you're collecting, and define, create a SharePoint site that's dedicated to that kind of at a minimum, as a base level. And then you can start putting those things in that document library there. You can enable that link content type. And then you can just create as many of those links to different things and give them titles and tag them with other metadata. That would be the way to do it.
But I think you're definitely hitting on something. I think video files tend to be the most challenging, especially external video, because it's not like a PDF's the easiest thing to share, right? It's small and it's
and bear in mind that the
download.
behavior of those things will be different. So when a user clicks on a link that's to an external resource, they're going to be taken outside of that SharePoint site. So that'll probably be opened in a new window or in a new tab. Whereas if you're clicking on a link to a video file, let's say that's inside your organization and is a stream video that's stored elsewhere in SharePoint or maybe in OneDrive, that will actually open right in the browser and start playing right there from within your environment, because you own that content. So there will be differences depending on the type of thing that you're linking to, but all of that is possible. And the huge benefit of doing that is that all of those things can be together and then searchable.
Yes.
So somebody can go onto that site or onto your intranet, let's say, and they can search for content having to do with
the conference or
something like that, and it will bring them all of that content. So the external videos of the conference, as well as any internal videos that maybe somebody did while they were there.
Which creates that ecosystem, and then you can have the autonomy.
All in one place.
To be able to find it. Good questions. Love it. And we appreciate it. Looks like one person is French and is actually translating their own comments. So really appreciate that. And thank you everyone for joining today. Like I said, we'll be here November 1st, first Wednesday of every month, to do this all again. We have a link in the chat for all the different things that we've mentioned. Definitely check out the guidebook. We also have a couple webinars coming up. So these are throughout the month of October. Check out our website for those. Those are based on internal communication. It's the foundation of a healthy business. And if we were able to help you today, let us know. We do have a testimonial link that we can post, but definitely check that out on our website as well. We love to hear from all of you. So thank you, Mike, for joining me on the hot desk on my birthday. And I think that's all we've got for you today.
Thank you.
Yeah. Have a great Wednesday, everyone. We'll see you next time.